Hi beauties! In today's video, we're going to be making this super fun and easy DIY scrunchie. The free pattern is available on my website at rosypeñapatterns.com. The link is in the description bar below. For this project, we're going to need some scrap woven fabric. I'm using this really beautiful butterfly print. You'll also need some sewing pins, some 1/8 of an inch elastic, and then you'll also need a bodkin or a safety pin. I'm going to be using both in today's video, a rotary cutter and a rotary cutting mat, also some snippers and some paper scissors to cut out your pattern. And then if you have some pattern weights, those are really helpful as well. The very first step, of course, is just to cut out your pattern pieces. Once you have all of your pattern pieces cut out, go ahead and grab your fabric and fold it with right sides together. Then you're going to place the scrunchie pattern piece on the fold of the fabric. So when you fold your fabric with right sides facing, you want to make sure you have the end of that pattern piece on the fold, so that whenever you cut this out and you open it up, it's one big long strip of fabric. The bow will need to be cut out 2 times on the fold, so I'm going to fold my fabric one more time onto itself so that I can cut out both layers at once. Place your bow fabric pieces with right sides facing, and you're going to pin along the outer edges. When you sew the bow, you want to make sure you leave a 1-inch opening along the center so we can turn the bow with right sides facing out. Now, working on our long rectangle piece, we're just going to fold that in half, and we're going to use our iron to gently press a crease along the center. Once you've done that, go ahead and just pin along the raw edges, again with right sides together. You're going to also want to leave a 1-inch opening along the center of this piece as well. Go ahead and take your fabric to your sewing machine, and we're going to first sew around the outer edges of the bow piece. We're going to use 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, or 6 millimeters. Again, making sure to leave a 1-inch opening along one of the center sides. Now, working on our scrunchie piece, we're just going to sew along the raw edges with 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, making sure to backstitch at the beginning and the end of your seam, and also don't forget to leave that 1-inch opening along the center. Now you just want to carefully trim away that seam allowance to about 1/8 of an inch. Be very careful not to cut past your stitches. Now I'm going to use my bodkin tool to turn these fabric pieces with the right sides facing out. So I just slip the bodkin into the fabric piece, and then I'm going to clip one end of it and then use that to turn the fabric with right sides facing out. I really love this tool. If you guys don't already have one, I'll have it linked in the description bar below. And then I'm just going to also repeat that step to my bow piece as well. Again, just slipping that bodkin in and clipping one end of the fabric, and then gently turning my fabric with the right sides facing out. Now that I have my fabric with the right sides facing out, I'm just going to give that a nice press at my ironing table. To help with the bow, I'm going to use this point turner. This is just going to help me get a nice point at the end of my bow. Now this is probably the trickiest bit of making this scrunchie. So for this step, I like to use a safety pin. I'm just going to clip one end of the seam allowance on the scrunchie piece, and then I'm going to clip the opposite end on the seam allowance of the scrunchie piece as well. I'm going to secure that safety pin, and then I'm going to turn the tube inside, and I'm going to come out through that small hole that we left on the side of the scrunchie. So go ahead and just use your safety pin to help you maneuver the fabric through the tube and then through the opening on the side of the scrunchie. Once you have that pulled out, you'll see the wrong sides of the fabric, and then the right sides of the ends of the scrunchie should be facing each other. Take your fabric pieces to your sewing machine, and we're going to first sew that opening on the bow shut. You want to sew a top stitch about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. Now we're going to sew the raw edges of the scrunchie. So if you've ever made Barbie clothes or any other very small project, this step will be a breeze. But if you've never worked on a very small seam allowance, this step can be a little bit tricky. So go ahead and just take your time, and you just want to sew around the circular ends of the scrunchies, again with right sides facing, and you're sewing about 1/4 of an inch away from the raw edge. So go ahead and just take your time and slowly maneuver the fabric and sew a few stitches at a time. Once you finish sewing that piece, go ahead and just gently tug on your fabric so you can place it with the right sides facing out. Then we're going to use that small opening on the side of the scrunchie, and we're going to insert our elastic. So you want to cut 1/8 of an inch elastic about 7 inches long. If you have really thick hair, you might want to cut 8 inches, and if you have really fine hair, you might want to just cut 6 inches of elastic. I'm using my bodkin tool to help me insert my elastic, and you want to make sure you secure one end of the elastic to the fabric so it doesn't get lost in your scrunchie. Once you have both ends of the elastic out, you just want to sew a stitch to secure those ends in place. So go ahead and just overlap the ends of your elastic, and then just sew a stitch across the elastic to secure in place. Now all that's left to do is sew the opening on the scrunchie shut. So you just want to sew about 1/8 of an inch away from that opening. Very last step is just to tie your bow around your scrunchie. So go ahead and just tie a single knot using your bow. Once you finish with that, you're all done with your DIY scrunchie. I really hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you check out my other DIY tutorials, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye guys!